Hello, and welcome to the Media Center's 11th Local Hero Award Series, in which we showcase 6 people from the Mid-Peninsula for outstanding achievement or contributions to the community. We solicited nominations and were especially looking for the unsung heroes. Each winner is an inspiration and each has a great story to tell. Susan Lutter retired at an early age from a high-powered Silicon Valley advertising career. So how did she get to volunteering full-time for apes in Africa? It all began with the introduction to a very special, one might even say superhuman, friend. While the skills she used in her previous profession are proving a surprisingly good fit in this new endeavor, she's also discovering the utterly unexpected about Africa, its animals, its people, and herself. Susan, you went from advertising to apes. How did that happen? Connect the dots for me, if you will.
Doesn't it always, right? It's sort of like solving puzzles. You know, in advertising, you're figuring out the parts and the pieces and the people to get something done, to get a product launched or a company launched. And I like that. And then I found a puzzle that really needed to be solved and that deserves to be solved. We're running out of gorillas.
Tell me about that process. You said, I found. Have you been a lifelong animal lover or pet lover or gorilla lover? And this was a dream fulfilled, or how did you get there?
I've almost always had a dog, but I wasn't particularly into animals. I grew up during Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom and reading National Geographic, but in those days I wanted to be an astronaut. So the animal part, the gorilla part came much later. When I stopped working and started volunteering, and I was able to volunteer, ran across an opportunity with the Gorilla Foundation, which is Koko, who does sign language, and it was just fascinating. So that was
so you went about this rather methodically. It's not something you've wanted to do all your life.
No.
Yeah,
no.
I think that's really interesting.
It's a happy accident. It really is.
Well, so tell me about this happy accident. I mean, Koko is what? Friend, famous, character, and yet you worked with her. How did that affect you? How did that change you?
It was going to work with Koko was probably the most stunning thing I'd ever done. It was completely different. It was fascinating work. I never would have thought that would have happened to me. And it's 12 miles from my house. I mean, who gets an opportunity to do something like that?
Why was it fascinating? What did you not expect?
Well, I didn't really know much about gorillas, and I'd heard bits about Koko over the years. But, so I was fascinated by it's just fascinating to learn about gorillas and what they do. And I was learning it not only from Koko herself, but from some amazing people who work there that I was really fortunate to spend 4 years with.
Tell me how she taught you about herself. Some examples.
Well, just watching her, she's funny. She makes bad comments if she doesn't like something. She teases. And she knew I didn't know sign language very well. Most of the people who work with her are very fluent. And when they speak sign to each other, it's a blur. If she wanted me to do something, she would sign very slowly and very large in exaggerated gestures. Funny. And then look at me as if to say, do you understand now? I mean, I didn't spend full time with her, but I got some glimpses into a very interesting personality.
So she had a sense of humor?
Oh, yes. Oh, she teases, she tickles, she pokes. She comes up with games. Yeah.
How close, how much of a friend was she?
Boy, I was probably certainly more impressed with her than she was with me, is my guess. So I just liked her tremendously, and still do.
You learned a lot about language, I gather, human language from studying her language. Tell me a little bit about what you learned about language.
Well, first, because I took a couple courses to try to get ready for this, American Sign Language is the third most spoken language in the U.S. after English and Spanish, which I didn't know. And because part of what I did was talk to other people in the scientific community about what our work was, I came to understand that there are people who aren't sure that sign language is really language or that Koko's really speaking it. And is it maybe just a trick? You know, like a dog will sit so you'll give him a treat. But the way I look at it, as humans, we learn to talk as children to get what we want. So I don't see her doing anything differently than we all did.
What are some examples of how her intelligence impressed you, if in fact it did? I assume it did.
Oh, yes, very much so. She, for example, inventing words, using the language you have to describe a completely new and novel situation is something that's supposedly higher order thinking. You know, not just if you've taught me that's a pen, I know it's a pen. And when someone was wearing a ring, Koko had never been taught the sign for ring. So she called it a finger bracelet.
Oh, yeah, nice.
That's clever, that's smart. That's a clue to what's going on inside that great big head of hers, right? She lies to get out of trouble.
Oh, really?
Say, well, who spilled the water? She said, well, Louise did. Koko. Louise isn't here. Who spilled the water? Susan did. Usually on the third time, she'll tell the truth. She'll admit it. I think that's amazing. That tells you there's so much going on in there.
What about emotionally? How sophisticated are they in general, or was Koko in particular?
Koko could describe her emotions in a language we could understand, which is amazing. But I've seen a lot more about that at the sanctuary.
Oh, good. We're gonna get right to that.
Okay.
So tell me what you took from Koko to the sanctuary.
I mean, if it hadn't been for Koko, I wouldn't be there. So I owe it all to her. First, I did learn a lot about gorillas, gorilla behavior, you know, just things I didn't even know, and including started to learn about their situation in the wild. So that was something I got from working with Koko. But I was literally introduced to the people who are doing the work in the field. So it wasn't just a general, here's a topic, but I was able to meet a number of these people. And you know, from my business career, if there's something you're curious about or someone you think you might want to work with, you go see them. You sit down and you have a conversation. So I figured if I want to know about conservation, I should go talk to the people who are doing it.
And you have said that your first trip to Africa changed everything for you. Tell me about that.
You wanted a short answer, right? I expected, first of all, the rainforest is as stunning as you've heard. It just is, know that. I expected to be amazed by the animals when I got there, and I was. I mean, they really, really are amazing. What I wasn't prepared for was to be blown away by the people. The people who are taking care of the animals, the people who are working with the villages, the communities nearby. I was just stunned. These are sophisticated, serious, strong people who aren't hard. I was just...
That's an interesting mix, the strong but not hard.
Yeah.
So what does your organization do for the gorillas?
Okay. Ape Action Africa is what we call a conservation sanctuary. So we have two key roles in terms of conservation. The first is we make sure those rare survivors of disappearing species do survive. We have more than 250 gorillas, chimpanzees, endangered monkeys who live in health and safety under our protection in the forest. So that's one role. But that doesn't solve the problem. I mean, we need to save these individuals, but the real key role is working with everyone from the national government to the local communities to protect the forest and protect the wild, the wild cousins.
Tell me about some of the, I gather that there are, well, necessity is the mother of invention, and you discovered some, rather clever workarounds and inventions that sprang from that. Tell me about that.
Well, we call it being creative, right? You have a need, you look at the materials on hand, and you do what you can with them. Almost a simple one, gorillas have a lot of dental issues, just like people do, and you have to drill. So dental work is a lot of what our veterinary staff does. They don't have a dental drill. They use construction tools because they're drills.
Painful. Yeah.
Because it's better than not addressing the situation. And you know, you go into the outdoor stores here, and you see the headlamps for hikers. Mm-hmm. Those are great for doing surgery. Wow. When you don't have any electricity. What else? I've seen surgery done on the tailgate of a pickup truck. Wow. You know, the MASH hospital that we used to watch on TV? Yes. I call it our mobile animal surgical Toyota. Our little MASH unit goes out. And we help keep the supply kit full for the vet.
And you told me about one instance, I don't know if you were there, about an injured baboon.
I'm still impressed by that story myself. Our animals live in big enclosures in big family groups. And baboons fight. That's just part of what they do. They have big teeth, and in one case a baboon was literally slit open across his entire torso. Rushed him into the clinic. He's on the table. They're going to stitch him up. They're going to do what they can. And his intestines just all slid out onto the floor. Now, they were still attached, but, you know, if you spread them out, apparently the connective tissue had been cut. That's not covered in the textbook. So the vet team got a bunch of bottled water, washed, cleaned, rinsed, put everything back in where it was supposed to be, tucked it in, stitched the guy up, and he was fine in a week.
Wow.
They are creative. And I think the big thing is they don't give up. Mm-hmm. Those people just don't give up until that animal's in really good shape.
Well, doesn't your organization have the best survival rate in Africa? Tell me, how do you do that? Is that from these clever tricks?
Yes, it's from the clever tricks, and it's, there's often emergency veterinary, as you would imagine, because when we get, most of the animals who come to us are orphans, and it's because their whole family's been killed, and literally they are not worth the bullet. So when we get to somebody, they're not just injured, they probably have disease and they're hungry and thirsty and all those things. So they need medical intervention, and they need long-term psychological recovery. And and they've lost their family. And babies stay on their mother for up to 3 years, literally on their mother full time. So you walk around the sanctuary, and so we have to, if we don't address that need, we'll lose them. So you'll see, if you're being the foster parent, you don't actually care for the baby, you wear them. You'll see people walking around with wheelbarrows with 2 or 3 chimpanzees or gorilla babies hanging on them because they would be hanging on their mother. And that's the psychological, that's the social work that we have to do. Gorillas, as big as they are just like humans. If you have a baby, an infant, even if you keep them warm and you give them food, if you don't hold them, they'll die. Literally, they will die if you don't hold them. So you see people wearing baby animals.
And they're attached individuals, right?
Yes, very much so.
So you no longer, because you don't live there, you no longer get to work directly with the animals. Is that correct?
Right. I don't work directly with them. I can count on one hand the times that I've actually helped do something with, like picking army ants off the babies. All hands on deck when it's time to do that. Part of it is, one, if I have to be in quarantine before I see an animal because I've just come off a plane and they catch a cold, they could die. The other is, it really is hard for them when people leave. They like permanent family. So it's much better, and in our case now, it's all the staff. It's the local Cameroonians who are there full-time, long-term, who are their family.
Well, now let's move to that, because you learned at some point that it's not just about the animals, and you started expanding your work to the communities. How did that happen, and why is that important? On one hand, you live with your neighbors, and you get to know your neighbors and you help them when you can. So that's just sort of good citizenship part of it. But one of the things that surprised me
when I had my first exposure to the community work that the sanctuary was doing, was how little we here at home knew about the people that conservation depends on. This is their country. These are their forests. Their help is essential if we're going to save these animals and these forests, not just for the animals' sake, but for the people's sake too. So that was a surprise.
I thought it was interesting because I think you said that when you, well, being a problem solver, having worked in advertising, you might think that you would walk in and say, there's a problem, here's what we need to do. You didn't do that. What did you do instead, and what was the result?
Actually, it was a little bit, I took a bit of a page from what we did in advertising. You try to figure out what you're trying to get accomplished, what you have to work with, and what you're up against. And then you go look for a solution. You don't come in with a solution and say, where can I apply this? So I was naive. You know, I hadn't studied, right? I hadn't been looking into this for my life. So I had people who let me ask them a million questions.
And you walked in and just said, what do you need? Right.
Yeah, what do you need and why, and help me understand, because they might phrase a request one way, and I don't necessarily know what that means. So it's a lot of questions.
What were some of the requests that surprised you and might surprise the rest of us?
We had been doing an exchange program, a program for a couple of years between village schools and some schools here in the U.S. And the kids wrote to each other and did posters, and we would do a video chat with, not a video, but an online chat with them at the end of the school year. And that was really fun. And we were walking back to our village from a big celebration day we had with 4 schools there. And it was a 3.5-hour walk, of course. And I thought, well, what do you need next for the schools? Because that was part of our community program. Thinking it's going to be chalk or desks or books or something. And the education officer said toilets. I said, what? There are no toilets for 7,000 people. Wow. They don't have sanitation. They don't have municipal services. Really? So I said, well, let me work on it. Took us a couple years, but we did it.
Wow. You did something similar for the girls that a lot of people wouldn't have thought about, and it changed their lives. Tell me about that one.
When, you know, working in the schools, and these are grade schools mostly, you see in the early grades, lots of girls, lots of boys, it's all fine. You go to grade 6 and there's no girls left. Well, because when they get their period, they have to stay home. They miss a week, a month of school, and pretty soon they're so far behind they drop out. Well, the reason they stay home is that they can't afford what we would consider basic sanitary supplies. Well, we found an organization that it's all volunteers who makes washable, reusable sanitary kits in the cutest little drawstring backpacks. And they pulled together 1,200 kits, and we took them and we distributed them to the girls, and they went crazy. Wow. They can, and even 3rd graders know that they want to grow up to be something big, and now they can. Wow. They can stay in school.
So you've been doing this for 12 years now. What about the culture or the work has surprised you in the big picture? I think the surprise in the work is how many people don't know about what we're doing. But again, it's a long way away. These are focused projects, which is part of why the best use of me is maybe not taking care of an animal, but over here talking about it. We still don't understand as much as we could, I think, about the community impact. And I think the communities, we can really help them and everything will get better. I'm still surprised that I'm often the first white person these people have ever met. Wow. I still get asked if they can touch my hair. And you would think after all these years, there must be dozens of us through there, but not necessarily. On this side, though, I was giving a school talk, and one young boy raised his hand, and this really surprised me. It was after I'd shown my videos and my pictures, and he asked if I really knew those people. And I think that was maybe a comment on media now and changing things and photoshopping and all that. And it made me really change how I talk about the project. He thought I just got those pictures online and I was making it up. See. Wow.
So I said, well, So, odd things that you wouldn't expect. Culture-wise, we're a lot more alike than we think. Certain things are different. Nothing is hidden there. A third grader can tell you what happens if you get AIDS. You turn gray and die. They know that. There's nothing hidden there. They don't have the luxury of compartmentalizing like we can here. And mothers of teenage girls complain about them going boy crazy.
Oh, I love it.
Just the same.
Well, how has all of this changed you, and what have you learned about yourself?
Well, I am learning a new kind of patience, and I have a long way to go, so that's there. I am just amazed by, I'm still amazed by these people and how much they can do without all the fancy, shiny trappings that we have here. And this is where, for people from here, I mean, we're the ones who can help them with a lot of what they need. I'd love to be able to bridge that gap. So I'm trying to learn how to be better at that. And I'm just amazed that you can live, you don't need gallons of water a day to live.
That's a timely comment. So on that, we'll end on that note since we're out of time. Keep up the good work, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Do you know someone who has overcome significant hardship and has an inspiring story to tell? Someone who has sacrificed or given over and above to the community and deserves some recognition? If so, please contact us with your nomination for next year's Local Hero Awards. To find out more about our local heroes and to watch interviews with all of the winners, visit our website, midpennmedia.org. At the Mid-Peninsula Community Media Center, you can make your own videos and television programs and take classes in all aspects of media production. You can also hire our professional services team. To find out more about that, go to mcproservices.com. Congratulations to all our winners, and thank you for watching.